Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the first IAG SDG side event for the UN Statistical Commission. My name is Carol Williams, and I'm the co-chair of the Interagency Expert Group on SDG Indicators, and I'm with Statistics Canada. And we're delighted to have you in our discussion on the use of non-traditional data and quality assurance in SDG monitoring. This topic is super important to our group as we work with custodian agencies. On the global monitoring framework for the SDGs, and as countries explore new ways to collect data, while also ensuring that there's quality in the national statistical system. Also, take note, we're in the decade of action and the final 8 years of the 2030 agenda. And in order for policymakers to better develop policy to help attain the SDGs, there's a need for more data. And sometimes that data may come from outside the national statistical system. So that brings us to our event today, which aims to have participants share their experiences on innovative ways to assure the quality of statistical production using non-traditional data sources and new techniques, identifying best practices, main challenges, and how to use these data. We're going to hear from 5 countries about their experiences. This seminar session will then be followed by a discussion with the panelists. In the interest of time, we request that all countries presenting keep it to 10 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session following the presentation. So if those listening, put your questions in the chat, and we'll address them at the end. So we're going to begin with the United Kingdom. Our first presenter is Ms. Anastasia Nikolova, the Senior Statistical Analyst at the UK Office of National Statistics, and she's going to present on the UK's non-traditional data quality assessment tool and their experiences with that. You have 10 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so yes, I'll talk to you a bit about our non-traditional data quality assessment tool, which is essentially a tool that we developed at the ONS for the use of non-official statistics and their use in reporting towards the Sustainable Development Goals. But before we go into it, I thought maybe we should spend some time on actually talking about non-traditional data in this context, what that means for us. And I already mentioned it. In this case, we're talking about non-official statistical sources, kind of an umbrella term for data or statistics produced by non-official organizations, which are not covered by government or other formal standards. And what I mean by non-official organizations, again, in terms of the definition that we've pinned down for our national context, it's not a UK government department or a government-related body, local devolved authority, or an official international reporting body. So some organization that's not any of these things we would count as non-official. So sources coming from that would be, we would need to pass through this tool. What I mean by official international reporting bodies, these are things like Eurostat, UNSC, OECD. So if we do source data from there, we would count that as official. So, which leaves us with things like charities, businesses, and academia, to give a few examples of potential non-traditional data sources in our case, as most of the data that we use is official. Next slide, please. Yes, so we've developed this tool, which we internally refer to as the non-official protocol. Essentially, it's just a spreadsheet that gives us like a scoring system. It helps us to decide if a source is suitable for use on our reporting platform for the SDGs or not. And it's based on a model that was originally developed by Statistics Netherlands. Unfortunately, they didn't actually develop it to the end, but we adopted their initial proof of concept, so to speak, and we developed it further. We aligned it with our UK Statistics Authority Code of Practice for Official Statistics and our Ethics Advisory Committee guidelines as well. So in a way, it's closely aligned with requirements for official statistics, but not entirely, because obviously, there are things that we thought can be compromised on. So it covers assessment of statistical data sources, and another key thing is that some of the dimensions that we decided to include in this assessment tool we've made them quite SDG specific, but they could be easily adapted for a wider use. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a schematic to show you how the tool works in terms of flow. So I'll go into a bit more detail into that, but on the right, you can see the 3 pillars of the UK Code of Practice for Statistics. So that's trustworthiness, quality, and value. And underneath each of these pillars, there are more detailed clauses or principles. So it's quite similar to, you know, other kind of international frameworks that you would be familiar with. Produced by the UN and the fundamental principles of official statistics. It's obviously closely aligned with that. So we've tried to stay aligned with it as well, but we've tried to prioritize and extract the most essential things that we would need for assessing the quality of non-official statistics. So the way the tool works, it has 2 stages, so to speak. So the first one is the top box there, quality gateway. So we have 3 dimensions in there: ethics and privacy, transparency and accountability, and need. And each one of those would be either a pass or a fail when we're assessing the specific source. So if any of these fail, then the source scoring doesn't proceed any further. It's considered as not suitable for use on our reporting platform. But if they all pass, then we proceed to the next stage, which is the quality matrix. So it's quite similar. It has it has more dimensions. So we have relevance, methods, coverage, timeliness and availability, data journey awareness, and quality assurance. And each one of these, instead of being scored as a binary pass or fail, we have a score between 0, which is not acceptable, and 3, which is ideal. So in the tool that we have, both for the gateway and the matrix, there's a lot more detail, which helps you decide what score a source should have. And you know, the decision is closely linked to the 3 pillars you see on the side as well. So basically, after we've gone through the matrix, an average score is taken. So if the score is over 1.5, the average, and there are no scores of 0, then the source is considered suitable for use. But if it's less than 1.5 or equal to, and we have any zeros, then it's not suitable for use. And this is basically the decision tree, so to speak. Next slide, please. So I'll try and quickly talk you through, not in too much detail, but this is just a screenshot of, as I said, the tool is basically a spreadsheet that we've designed. So this is a snapshot of the quality gateway. So you have the 3 dimensions that I mentioned before on the side, so ethics and privacy and so on. And then you have the pass or fail criteria to kind of help you make the decision. In the highlighted bit, it's a drop-down box where you have to put either pass or fail, and then you have an explanation column where the person who's scoring it ideally needs to put some explanation as to why they have decided that it's either a pass or fail. And this is an example of a scored source, which we use for indicator 8.10.1. It's a source from a link, which gives us ATM statistics and trends, and we use that in order to report the number of cash machines in the UK. So it's a non-official statistics source. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you will notice in the criteria there is quite often references to things like T1, T6, T4.1. So these are basically those pillars that I mentioned from the code of practice. So when you're assessing a source, you need to have this template or this tool on one side, and you need to have the code of practice on the other side, so you can refer and have a quick look what does T1 stand for in a bit more detail. So it's a PDF document which is open to everyone. T stands for the trustworthiness pillar. So kind of you need to use the 2 hand in hand. So in this case, this source has passed all 3, which means we can proceed to the next slide, which is the matrix. There we go. Again, not too much detail, and I'm not going to cover all the dimensions because there are a few of them, but these are the first 2, so timeliness and ongoing availability and relevance. Again, in a similar way, in the grayed out cells, you can see the description. So what it takes for a high score, what it takes for a score of 2, a score of 1 and 0 to help you make that decision. Again, we have reference to specific areas of the code of practice. And there is some bits are a bit SDG specific as well, because in terms of relevance, for example, we're talking about the UN metadata and so on. And it would depend obviously on what kind of score the source would get. So in this case, the source scored quite highly on both of these dimensions. And if we go to the next slide, so that's the last two dimensions, data journey awareness and quality assurance. Again, same principle. Here the source scored a bit lower, but the main thing is that the overall, the final score, which is in that green box at the end, was 2.16, which means it's a pass. And it tells you that in words, because also we don't have any zeros. We didn't go through all the dimensions, but there were no zeros in this scoring thing, which is why we did actually use this source and we are using it on the platform. So that's like the final decision on that. Next slide, please. So yeah, that was a whistle-stop tour through it, obviously for the interest of time. Just a reminder of, what the schematic looks like and what the different dimensions are. And the key thing is, after a source has been assessed and the decision has been made by one member of staff, it needs to be double-checked by at least one other member. So if there's a disagreement about a specific score, these need to be resolved before we proceed, and there is an escalation procedure as well if there is persistent disagreement, which we haven't really had so far. And another benefit of this tool is that it can act as a diagnostic as well. So even if, say, a source fails, so it goes into the box not suitable for use on the platform, it doesn't mean it's a dead end for it. It means that, first of all, you can see exactly why it fails. Is it, a specific dimension? Maybe it's the quality assurance that we couldn't find enough information to score it. So what then we could do is to go back to the provider and open a conversation about it and see if we can find that information. Next slide, please. I won't go through a detail of this because we don't have much time, but just to give you a very brief indication, the different indicators that we currently use non-official data for, that's selection of those, and these are the different kind of, charities or academic or NGO organizations that we use data from, and we have scored all of those through this tool that I just showed you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I've linked their contact details and also a link to our publication that came out last year, which tells you a bit more about the context of this tool, and it also lists the different dimensions, so you can have a look at the different criteria for each one in more detail than what I could show you here. But this is it in a nutshell, and I will stop now because I think I'm over 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Asanaska. That was really interesting, and you were bang on 10 minutes, so that's perfect. I think this is a really, really interesting tool, and of course, as you already know, Anataska Canada is adapting the tool for our own use. What I really like is that a score comes out from it, which provides people with concrete number about the sense of the quality of that, and that you've added the ethical framework. So it goes beyond the regular quality dimension. So I think that that's really, really important. So we're going to move to our second presenter. Our presenter is from the Philippines. It's Ms. Wilma Gulian, the Assistant Chief Statistician of the Social Sector Statistics at the Philippines Statistical Authority. And she's going to present on data innovations using non-traditional data sources. Wilma, you have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Cara. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay. I don't know if you can see my face. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to all colleagues in this call. I will be sharing the Philippines' exploration and the use of non-traditional data sources for SDG monitoring. And there are four major talking points as given in this outline. Um, to facilitate coordination and collaboration among agencies and to ensure the quality of data in the monitoring of the SDGs in the Philippine statistical system, the following mechanisms were established. One is the SDG indicators focal points. This is an interagency committee composed of 34 government agencies that include SDG data producers, implementing agencies, and oversight agencies. This group plays a vital role in the methodological development and efficient updating of the SDG indicators. Another group is the PSA SDG team. This is within the Philippine Statistics Authority, the NSO in the country, and it is tasked to carry out expeditiously the responsibility of PSA as the official repository of the SDG indicators in the Philippines and to ensure that methodological developments in the SDG indicators are discussed in respective sectoral committees. And there are two more, the Task Force on Citizen-Generated Data and Task Force on Big Data. And the role of this task force are to craft policies, standards, and validation mechanisms of non-traditional data for possible consideration and official monitoring. The exploration on the use of big data and citizen-generated data as possible sources for official statistics and for SDG monitoring is actually one of the key statistical development activities in the SDGs monitoring chapter of the country's National Strategy for the Development of Statistics, or NSDS. And the rationale for exploring the use of non-traditional data sources in SDG monitoring in the country are number one, to address data availability, and this would to possibly supplement the number of indicators being monitored in the Philippines, as only 40% of the global indicators are currently being monitored. The rest are proxy and supplemental SDG indicators for country monitoring. The second rationale is to enhance data disaggregation to complement data generated from official statistics so that disaggregation by geographic locations, migratory status, estimate on special population groups, etc., to make visible the invisible. And the third rationale is for cost efficiency concerns. We all know that conducting surveys and censuses, the traditional sources of data, are very costly, and it would be an good alternative to have data coming from um, what we call big data or large volumes, usually unstructured data such as satellite images and the like. These are coming from private groups or individuals. Now, one of the big data initiatives is the use of nighttime lights in the estimation of poverty statistics. In the Philippines, the master sample used in our household surveys was updated, leading to the generation of reliable poverty estimates from national, regional, down to provincial and highly urbanized cities. But apart from this geographic disaggregation, granularity at lower level is still clamor from among our policymakers and stakeholders in assessing and reducing poverty incidence. So, highlighted in this map is the province of Palawan. And it may be noted that on the left side, when you look at the provincial level, one will classify Palawan as in the poorest cluster. It's colored red, orange. However, disaggregating it to lower level, for example, municipality level, it would tell a different story, as only a portion of the province, as shown by the map at the right hand side, it actually categorized in poorest cluster. Now, since direct estimation from the survey will not provide reliable estimates at municipal level, because we would be needing a very large sample size so that we can have reliable estimates at the municipal level, what we did was to adapt the small area estimation technique. And the SAE focusing on the Elbers-Lange technique, a method developed by the World Bank. It is a project to address the concern in generating reliable city and municipal poverty estimates. It is a model-based methodology combining survey data and census data. And the idea of the ELL is to borrow strength from the much more detailed coverage of the census to supplement the direct estimations of the survey. Since for the model building, the following four criteria were used in choosing the best predicting model. The relationship of the variables is generally consistent with earlier researchers. Second is that the model should be robust. Third is that estimated regional, provincial, and highly urbanized poverty incidence does not largely differ from the official poverty estimates, and it should have good statistical properties like acceptable model adequacy, parsimony, significant regression coefficient. So for the SAE 2018, the use of big data, specifically nighttime lights, was explored for the very first time as one of the explanatory variables in predicting city and municipal poverty estimates, and as an innovation on using non-traditional data in statistics released by the NSO PSA. The nighttime lights is associated with economic activity, where higher luminosity in the area during nighttime is more likely associated with greater economic activity. So among the 17 regions modeled, it was Region 9 or Zamboanga Peninsula where the nighttime lights appeared to contribute significantly to the model at alpha equal to 5%. Comparing the final set of independent variables and with and without the nighttime lights, there is a minimal increase in the adjusted R square, but comparing the closeness of the uh, SAE to the official poverty estimates, the model with nighttime lights appeared to provide closer estimates to the officially released values with differences within the 2 sigma. Further, the model with nighttime lights provided more reliable estimates with coefficient of variation that are less than 10, but does not change much in terms of the grouping of the city and municipal poverty estimates. This figure actually shows the map of Zamboanga Peninsula City and the municipal level poverty estimates. So the SAE is not yet an official part of official statistics, although it is regularly generated, but in the absence of available data, this has been used by government offices and private sector. But we will be having further scrutiny to as to determine the effects of the nighttime lights in the generation of city and municipal poverty estimates. Now, there's another project that we did. It's the use of uh, citizen-generated data for SDG reporting in the Philippines. This was a study of the PSA and the Paris 21, and this revolves on the quality assurance of the data holdings of the CSOs and NGOs as potential source of the SDG indicators. So in that project, CGD was defined by answering the questions who, what, and how. As to who, it should be a non-state actor, either CSO or NGO. And how the data are sourced, it should be actively sourced or from the citizens. And what the purpose are the data gathered, it should be non-statistical purpose, such as monitoring, tracking interventions, and or project monitoring. As a milestone from the project, a CGD quality assurance framework was formulated to determine the viability of the CGD to be evaluated for adapting it for official reporting. The CGD quality assurance framework has 6 dimensions and score allocation matrix where the score ranges from 0 to 2, 0, 1, or 2. The 6 quality dimensions are relevance, another is credibility, another is frequency and timeliness. The fifth one is methods have to be documented. The method of data gathering is based on an international protocol or recognized standard. And the last but not the least is accessibility, how available the data are and are these released or shared to the public. These dimensions were selected and defined considering simplicity and practicality for application on data collected for non-statistical purposes, which is a prerequisite condition for CGD. Using CGD quality assurance framework, data are viable for further evaluation of the task force on big data and CGD if the score is at least 1.33 and there is no zero score in any quality dimension. So far, among the data holdings submitted by CSOs and NGOs, we actually have a long list, but so far the closest CGD that match an SDG indicator is the number of companies with sustainability reports, or SDG 1261, which is currently identified as Tier 3 indicator in the Philippines. And the data for this can be sourced from the Philippine Business for the Environment, or the PBE. Now, for the next steps, there are three action points. First, we will have to continue discussion of policy standard and validation mechanisms on the use of big data for official statistics and citizen-generated data for official reporting by the Philippine Statistical System in support to the SDG monitoring. We will be exploring the usage of big data in the generation of other SDG indicators, and we will continue the discussion of the integration of CGD in the data sources of the Philippine SDG monitoring. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wilma. That was very comprehensive. Great example of both small area estimation as well as using non-traditional data such as the luminosity for determining poverty. And then again, a quality assurance tool as well. That's super. We're going to move to our third presentation now, and that's Karen Chavez. She's the head of the SDG Indicators Unit at the National Administrative Department of Statistics in Colombia, or DANE, and she is my lovely co-chair of the IEAG. And she's going to provide a presentation on examples of experimental statistics in Colombia and the quality criteria. Karen, the next 10 minutes are yours.
Okay, thank you. Could you please confirm if you are hearing me now?
We hear you well, Karen.
Okay, thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Also, could you please confirm if you are seeing my screen now?
Not yet. We just see you.
Okay, just going to try again then.
We
Now?
see it now. Yes, we see it now, but it's not in presentation mode.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, first I would like to mention that DANE has been working from some years ago about new data sources. In the beginning, with all the industrial revolution and all the data that is available now to be used, but not necessarily that is collected for statistical purposes, it puts in the discussion probably a new ways to manage the data ecosystems, since the National Statistics Institute is not now the only one that have information to use for the statistical production. So we started all these discussions back in 2018. And that's the reason why now the current national statistics system in Colombia that was established by decree in 2019 includes diverse stakeholders and also enhance the use of new data sources. So here is just an example of how is composed our data ecosystem currently. We have diverse levels. We have a subnational level with stakeholders from private sector, public sector, academia, and civil organization. The same kind of stakeholders in the national level, and all these stakeholders can share the information that they have to contribute in any of the phases of the statistical production, starting with the identification of needs and also in the midterms in the collection of the data, and of course with the dissemination and use of the results. And with this, I would like to mention that again, one of the main results of all these past discussions is that we have now by decree that in the national statistics system, you can use alternative sources of information. In addition to that decree, we have two policy documents that foster the use of alternative sources of information. Both policy documents were issued in 2018. The first policy document is about big data, all the national strategy for big data, and it's not only for the National Statistics Institute, it's for the whole government. So we also work, thanks to this document, with the Ministry of IT and other entities. It's a really good tool from the policy side to enhance the data mining through the exploitation of big data sources. And in addition, we have the policy document for SDGs, and in all the tasks that we have in DANE as responsible for data about SDGs, there is one precise action that is also making us to explore the use of alternative sources of information, specifically for the production of SDGs. So we need to work in project of SDGs that involves new data sources to fulfill our task in this policy document. So with this, all this institutional arrangement, we have that since 2015, that it has been working on alternative sources and techniques and several innovation projects to take advantage of alternative sources such as internet data and satellite images. The new data sources are also paired with methodological innovations, because if you are using something that you were not using previously, you need to explore methods to process all that new data. And we also have found that, as in the case of satellite imagery, we can have improvements in data visualization, and overall we can widen the availability of data sources. Until 2019, all were isolated exercise of diverse technical directorates with any data published until that. So all these exercises were pretty interesting. However, we were not seeing any significant contribution in terms of SDG monitoring, because they were not being published in our national platform. So probably they were published in presentation in international events. However, those exercises were not recognized in the official statistical production. And in the right side of the screen, you have just like some examples. I'm not going to enter into the detail because it is published in our website, and also in the full presentation, you are going to see more detail about this exercise. We have diverse and it's are listed here in this slide. We have MPI, the multidimensional poverty estimates with satellite imagery at subnational levels of disaggregation that are per block. We also have indicator from the goal 11 published. We have two indicators of this goal, and about to be published an additional two ones. Also the indicator 9.1.1, and we also have some exercise about the early estimator for manufacturing industry in Colombia, an estimation of population volume of the ethnic groups of Colombia. So with all this, we started a discussion on how can we do to have all these projects at least recognized as innovative projects. So we develop a framework in DANE for experimental statistics. At international level, there is not an agreed definition of experimental statistics. So what we do with all the technical directors in a technical committee that is the highest technical authority here in DANE. We discuss about what were another national statistics office were doing in terms of publishing the data coming from alternative sources. And so we came with this definition that is in the slide, are the ones derived from projects in development that have at least one of the following innovative aspects: new sources of information, the statistical methodology used, or a new topic not previously measured. They are considered experimental because they still show room for improvement in terms of harmonization, coverage, and methodology. And they have not yet reached sufficient maturity in terms of the reliability, stability, or quality assessment of the data. In Colombia, the experimental statistics are official statistics by the decree of the National Statistics System that says that all data produced by the official the National Statistics Institution, is official data. So anything that DANE produced and approved to be published is our official statistic. However, we wanted to differentiate this line of experimental statistics from the traditional production because in international standards, we don't have still quality assessment procedures to guarantee that what we are producing with the innovation fulfill all the criteria. What we do, considering that we have worked not only in diverse measures, but also with different alternative sources of information, because we have worked with satellite imagery, with social media, and we also have combined this with innovative techniques as machine learning, small area estimation, and for none of those, either the sources or the methods, we have quality standards. And so what we do is that we took from the National Quality Assurance Framework Manual for Official Statistics from the United Nations Statistics Division, a document that also Colombia helped in participate in the conceptual and also in the making of this manual. So we took from this manual the quality attributes of official statistics that are 10, are the 10 listed here. And then we make an analysis of what are the non-negotiable quality attributes that the experimental statistics should fulfill in order to be published. So the first one that are listed in the slide are the ones that we decide that are required to be considered as experimental statistics. So any innovative project that is worked in DANE after is finished has this process of let's say a quick evaluation. First, we see if it fulfills the definition by looking if they use new sources of information, the statistical methodology used is innovative, or is a new topic not previously measured. Then we make a joint analysis and see how they can fulfill the 6 criteria that are here as non-negotiable for experimental statistics. And in addition, in this manual, you have a specific chapter for SDG indicators. And we do it in the SDG unit, a quality audit. However, this quality audit is not specifically for alternative sources of information is for all SDGs produced in Colombia. Why? Because currently more than 25 national institutions report SDG indicators using traditional sources. However, not all statistical operations from all the national statistics system have gone through the quality assessment. And we want to guarantee some levels of consistency. So we develop an Excel format is here because it is currently just in Spanish, and we develop a list of criteria, and we are just looking by each SDG if they are fulfilling or not all of the criteria, and we have set a threshold, and beyond that threshold, the SDG could be published, and it's done for all the SDG indicators, regardless these are calculated with traditional sources or non-traditional sources. What we have found as key elements is that we are not thinking in new or alternative sources of information as substitutes of traditional sources. We are most of the time combining alternative sources with the traditional sources to have data more disaggregated, or for example, to reduce the time between the collection method and the publication of the data. Also, we are using the different sources of information sometimes to contrast the innovative methods. For example, we are currently measuring some indicators of SDGs 16, and we are going to do the measure the first time through a survey, also through social media, and also through the use of a web app. So we are going to compare the different methods. And another key element is to have a toolkit of the technological infrastructure that you need to compute and also to process the big and large volumes of data. Another thing is to train the technical staff, because since these are kind of new methods and new sources, so new learnings and new capacities need to be established. Also, this is key to have partnerships between the national statistics system to access to the data from private sector, for example, and overall to access to the data that have the different stakeholders, but also to some partnerships at the international level, so you can use some knowledge that is also from some previous exercise abroad and would be used as examples here. Another thing is privacy and ethic protocols, because you are sharing data or you are taking data from different stakeholders, and at the same time, when you are doing computation in the cloud, for example, you need to be very aware of pseudo-anonymization protocols to ensure the statistical privacy of the data. Another thing is that it's needed to develop data production models more specific to these new data sources, because we are opening the floor for innovations, and we have designed a quality check criteria free basic that has the advantage to be used to any kind of alternative source, but is also a disadvantage because you have not yet specific standards to quality assessment for each of the new data sources used. And again, open floor, it's important for us to open the door for innovations in the national statistics system, because with the new data and the digitalization of the world, then this new data is going to be used and regardless it is official or not official statistic. If you see a lot of policy documents, even papers in international research, peer papers, you could see how they use big data, and they are not too aware of the quality issue. So I think that there are opportunities, of course, that there are a lot of challenges, but the statistical office should also be very aware of all this innovation, and at the same time not be only the stewardship for the data, but also of the quality for the whole national statistics system. And with this, I think that I'm concluding my presentation. Thank you, and back to you, Kara.
Thank you so much, Karen. Again, another really interesting presentation and very comprehensive. I really like the idea of a quality audit being done by the NSO on data that are produced, still official statistics, but potentially by other departments, just to ensure that they have followed some quality practices. And again, I think your point is really important. In order to use non-traditional data and have those partnerships, it's important to have toolkits. It's important to ensure we have training to be able to use them. And as you say, there's a lot of big data being used out there without having any kind of quality assessment. So I think that's really important. And then the experimental statistics, I think COVID has shown us all that NSOs have to react faster, and that experimental statistics are one way to provide information to policymakers in a timely manner. But noting there are some quality elements have been checked, but there are other quality elements that need to be considered before they move into regular statistics. So thank you very much, Karen. We're going to move to our fourth presentation, and that's from Ms. Alam Al-Ghassan, who is the Director of Electronic Transformation and Information Technology at the Jordanian Department of Statistics. Ms. Al-Ghassan will speak to us about the Jordanian experience in measuring road access for indicator 9.1.1 using non-traditional data sources. So please, over to you. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Ahlam Al-Rusan, IT Director. It's clear my sharing?
Yes, we see it well.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm Ahlam Al-Rusan, IT Director at Department of Statistics from Jordan. I'm happy to share with you our experience and our pilot of developing SDG 9.1.1 and how using open source and big data of developing this indicator. So during this presentation, I'd like to go through these aspects about SDG definition and the Department of Statistics strategy, the source of data that we use in this indicator, and how we specify the urban and rural, the opportunities and challenges, and what the next step we will do. Before of that, I want to give you a brief about my country, Jordan, as it is a small country that located in Middle East, and it's southeast area of Asia. About the population is around 10 million, up on the estimation of census 2015, and the area about 89,000 square kilometers, and it's distributed to the population distributed between two governments in the kingdom, and one of this kingdom, this government is Ma'an, which is have the one of wonder in the world, Petra. This is just a brief about Jordan. As overview of UN SDGs and the Agenda 2030 of UN, this is the time and the decade of taking action to advance the development of all SDGs. It's crucial for all of countries to actively engage and participate and develop plans and action items achieve these goals. In In Jordan and at Department of Statistics, we have been working on our plan for SDGs for several years. However, we are fortunate to have the support of several international organizations like NGOs, UN, and the other non-profit organization like Bridges 2030. And we have provided guidance and resources for us to better understand and therefore better prepare of our plan. The specifics of this indicator are noted here. Important of the consider and the benefit of this indicator for the policy and decision making in our government planning. The population access to roads is essential and very important. For people to get the hospitals, schools, and market. And limited to access the road impact every day and for their life of this population. The indicator help us evaluate those areas and where the roads that prevent the population from access their needs and their important things. So here about the definition of the rural access indicator, it's how to make the people access with the safety roads during 2 kilometers. And we consider 2 kilometers because it's the considered distance that we estimate that it's the people can walk without using car. But uh, about this road, what is the condition of this roads? Is it available in all season or no? That's the important thing that we have to know and collect the data. So what data required for measure the RAI or this indicator 9.1.1? So we have to have a road network, population distribution, accessibility of this road in all season, and the building layer, street layer. All of this data are needed for measure this indicator. But actually, what we have in our Department of Statistics, we have been implemented census 2015 population and household. So we have a population layer and we have a building layer, we have a street layer, and also we can consider the open source from the OpenStreetMap and from the World Bank. All these open resources help us to go in during developing this indicator, but we need capacity building and we need more of knowledge to know how to use this open source and how to implement this knowledge to develop this indicator. Here another resources that we have: landmark layer, building layer. And about our population in Jordan, how they are distributed between rural and urban. The most people are urban, depend on the population, census population 2015, but the rural area is wide and distributed over all government in the Jordan. What we did after UN initiative in this developing and support us of developing SDG 9.1.1, we start and after gathering all data that we have from censuses and from open source, we try to prepare some of the stages before go to measure the this indicator. So we make the buffering on the by using tools of ArcGIS. So we use this street on OpenStreetMap layer and make buffering in all of this street and around 2 kilometers from both sides. But here I want to mention about the definition of the rural up on Jordan. It's about the localities or the areas that include 5,000 or less population, as were defined in the in 2015 census of Jordan, but it's vary from country to another, and it's very important to restudy this definition as it is different and sometimes make some of bias in the data. So after we collect this data and we make buffering of this data and put the building layer on the buffering layer, we can compute and calculate how the population in this building that are served or population not served. By this slide, we can see the point, the green point. It's show the served building because it is within the 2 kilometer around the streets. But the white point, it shows the population that not served because it's out of this area. After that, we found that the rural depend on our calculation is around 10% and the urban is around 90% of our population. And we can, by calculation and using the equation of Rye, by make this equation and the percent observed of the total of rural, we found that the served is 63.8 and the total of the population, excuse me, sorry, yes, and the non-served is about 36.2. So this is the value by using the data that we have, but actually we are missing some of data, the condition of the roads. We make a lot of research how to collect this data. We didn't find any resources for this data condition of roads in Jordan, of rural area in Jordan, and we try to make a connection with the ministries that responsible of this data. And during our research, we found that similar project that implemented by Ministry of Public Work for a different target, but similar project that using the same or have the same result. So this is very interesting because it's supported by the same organization, World of Bank. So the important point here to have a coordination between the institute during the same country to make a unique and to save a unique effort and to save effort and money. About the challenges that we faced during collecting this data, lack of data, lack of consistent of data, and information need many calculation and times. The building is a point, not a polygon, and the adapting of highways, main and secondary roads only when the buffer is made, and we didn't take some streets such as street and services. But we have a lot of opportunities that we have to take a benefit from it. The high interesting and support from government on SDGs, high support from NGOs, the huge data we have from the censuses and from services that we have, and from open source. Very important to focus on the open source data that we can take a benefit from it. And new technology like the data science and machine learning, very important for us to focus and use this technology to make the high quality of results, and open source, using open source tools during this technology. I will back to what I mentioned about the project in the Ministry of Public Work. It's will be our next step to make the indicator more accurate and more acceptable to disseminate it, to have a good cooperation after we found this project it will be implemented, not implemented. It will be implemented next year, I think. We have a meeting with them and make cooperation between us and UN and World Bank. And it was very interesting discussion that they use tools called profile meter, which is measure the condition of the roads and collect the data in the database. And this tools is very expensive, but during our project, it's recommended from World Bank to use the open source application, Road Lab application, which have the same result but not the same accuracy. What we agreed to do to make a pilot for two applications and to compare the result. So if the result is similar, however, we can reduce the cost by using for all areas the free application instead of the laser profile meter application. After this, we can also make the first step about the rural area instead of the using it for all of government. If that's success, so we can continue in all of governments. Uh, and here it's a very important message to all countries to make sure that there is a unique work between all governments in national work and between all institutes. So that will save, really will save money, will save effort, will produce a more accurate data and product. Here we prepare a dynamic dashboard for SDG. Sorry. Dynamic dashboard for SDG 9.1.1, and we make it on the government level. It's can show us how the value between the governments in Jordan change. But this is a preparation. After we complete the next step, it will have added value for Department of Statistics. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Alaram. It is very interesting what you've done here for indicator 9.1.1. I think many countries are trying to use their road networks and overlay on top of other information to get at this indicator. And as you note, there are a lot of challenges using these kind of data, but I think the opportunities far outweigh any of the challenges. And so, congratulations to the Jordanian Statistical Office on doing this, as well as partnering with other departments and international organizations. So thank you very much. We're a little bit behind time, and we're going to move to our final presenter, Dr. Ashutosh Ojha, the Deputy Director General of the Social Statistics Division at the Indian Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and he is responsible for the SDGs for the National Statistical Office. Dr. Ojha will present on their country initiatives for the integration of data sources for SDG monitoring. You have 10 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Kara. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Myself, Ashutosh Ojha from NSO India, going to give a small presentation on country initiatives for the integration of data sources for SDG monitoring. Next, please. NSO India has developed a national indicator framework in sync with the global indicator framework, mainly to facilitate monitoring of SDG at national level. And we have at present, there are 295 indicators. And based on this national indicator, we release annual progress report on SDGs. Next, please. And these are some of the recent releases of NSO India on SDGs. Next, please. See, this is the goal-wise distribution of our latest national indicator framework. You can see that there are 295 indicators, and out of which for more than 90% of indicators, we are having data. And among this, about 78% of the indicator, we are having data source as administrative record, then 21% from survey, and the rest from census. Next, please. We are also facing certain challenges, mainly for non-availability of disaggregated data for number of indicators. And NSO India, as well as other ministries, also making sincere effort. NSO India is what effort NSO India is making. They are just trying to bridge the data gaps. They have launched many new surveys, as well as they have aligned their existing surveys as per SDG data requirement. Besides this, efforts are also being made by NSO India to explore the use of non-traditional methodology or data sources to bridge the data gaps, including that for SDG reporting also. And data integration is one of such effort. Next, please. Here on the screen, you can see that there are 3 success stories in India regarding use of data integration. And now I will present briefly all these 3 case studies in the data integration field, and very shortly. Next, please. So case 1, this is the use of data integration in developing sampling frame for service sector enterprise survey. Actually, NSO India conducts its socio-economic survey on households and enterprises. And these surveys are usually conducted either on yearly basis or 6 monthly basis. And each survey is identified as a round. So during 74th round, that was during July 16 to June 2017, survey was conducted on service sector enterprises. And in that survey, 3 types of frames were used. Sampling frame were used. One was business register of enterprises, that is mainly prepared by and maintained by state governments. Then the list of establishment from 6 economic census conducted by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and the list of enterprises registered under Company Act maintained by another ministry, that is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Next. And as an initial exercise, what we did, the list of 6th economic census and business registers, they were verified and got updated by our field officials. And then also the eligible units from MCA frame, that was also updated by our field officials. And the purpose of this exercise was mainly to make these 3 frames mutually exclusive. And then these 3 frames were then integrated, and the sample enterprises for the survey were selected from these integrated sampling frame using suitable sampling design. And after that, the detailed schedule about the enterprise were canvassed for these sample units. Next, please. This is the case 2, in which we used integration in developing sampling frame for annual survey of industry. This is the survey conducted by NSO India for the registered manufacturing sector since long, and mainly to estimate the contribution of registered manufacturing industries to the national income. And traditionally, the factory registered under one act is there, some section of one act, which is called Factory Act 1948, and there was another act, Beedi and Cigarette Workers Act 1966. These were the prime source of sampling frame for ASI for this survey. And it was observed that some big manufacturing units, which are not registered under these 2 acts, but are registered somewhere else, they are missing out. So actually, these units were supposed to be registered under these act only. So since they are not under this registered under this act, so they are not part of our ASI frame. So it was to capture such units, a decision was taken to move beyond this list and consult the business register of enterprises, and which was compiled by number of state governments, mainly to enhance the coverage of the survey by including big manufacturing unit in our frame. Next, please. And this exercise was carried out in respect of certain states during 2015 ASI and 2017-18 annual survey of industries, mainly to capture manufacturing unit that does not exist in ASI frame, and they are big units. And such units were identified, and then they were put on for verification about their existence, activities, and only eligible units were taken for the final sampling frame. Next, please. And you know, both these cases, case 1 and case 2, which I had just explained, these were helped us to broaden the coverage of our surveys, and in turn, they helped us in improvising our estimate based on these new integrated sampling frames. Here, this exercise also helped us to improvise certain SDG indicators from Goal 8 and Goal 9. So this is the, you can see the case 3, which is use of data integration in assessment of forest and tree cover. This is mainly to improvise or monitor certain targets of SDG 15. So in India, actually, the forest and tree cover assessment, this involves integration of geospatial data and survey data. Sorry. Actually, this remote sensing based mapping of forest resources, which is called forest cover mapping, and sampling based inventory of forest resources, these are integrated to get improvised estimate of forest and tree cover. And this entire exercise is being done by one organization under Ministry of, that is known as Forest Survey of India, under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Government of India. And it has been done in biennial cycle. Next, please. So the forest cover, basically, this is a wall-to-wall mapping exercise, and using remote sensing techniques, and it includes all patches of lands with a tree canopy density of more than 10% and more than 1 hectare in area, irrespective of land use, legal status, and ownership. Since this is a wall-to-wall mapping exercise, so it can be considered as a census operation. And if you want to get the detail of this, so you have to go to Forest Survey of India's website. And the data from where we are getting data from National Remote Sensing Center under India Space Research Organization of Government of India. And on the other hand, there is a tree cover assessment, which defines all the tree patches of size less than 1 hectare in outside the recorded forest area. And these smaller patches of trees, these are not included in forest cover due to the technological limitation of special resolution of satellite data, which is used for forest cover mapping. Next, please. And so therefore, tree cover is estimated through data collected during inventory of tree outside forest in rural and urban area under National Forestry Inventory based on stratified random sampling approach. So the methodology involves high resolution remote sensing data-based stratification along with field measurement on sample plots. And this forest cover and tree cover put together is called forest and tree cover, which is the parameter for monitoring the progress against the national forest policy of 33% of country's geographical area under it. So both these information, tree cover along with forest cover assessment gives us the complete extent of tree resources of the country, which we often call as forest and tree cover. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation, just illustrating the depth of data integration that has been undertaken in India to help measure the Sustainable Development Goals. And it also indicates, just how complex measurement of some of those indicators are. So thank you to that. Now, we are quite a bit behind time. So we're going to I don't see many questions that haven't been answered in the chat. So we're going to move right away to the panel discussion. I'm going to ask each panelist a question, and they will have 2 minutes to answer. And so we will start now. And our first panel question is going to go to our colleague from India. What is needed to incorporate non-traditional data sources and methods into the official production of statistics? You have 2 minutes if you would like to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Actually, I will take up this question in different way. What I would like to first flag some possible challenges in incorporating these non-traditional sources and methods in official production of statistics. So some of the issues which we could highlight, or we could understand based on discussion with various stakeholders, including that UN agencies. They were public acceptance and trust issues, then the lack of supporting legislation, or then the data quality issue, then lack of relevant methodology, lack of metadata, interoperability, which is lacking in this. Then there are some certain budget or resources. So if we can address some or most of these issues, that could be one of the solutions. And coming to India's case, in my opinion, since for SDG monitoring, there's a huge data requirement, and as well as due to lack of disaggregated data for some of the SDG indicator, there's a need to develop some data policy for incorporating non-traditional methods in official statistics. It is also important for the confidentiality concern also. And if we see the difference in concept, definition, classification in both these between traditional and non-traditional sources, and these are also some of the important issues that need to be seen in detail, because these are making use of non-traditional method challenging. One more thing I would like to say, that the quality issues also need to be seen. And most importantly, along with data policy, capacity building and skill development in this area could be of much help for incorporating non-traditional methods in official statistics in India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think we heard from our colleague also from Colombia that noted that the use of non-traditional data sources was actually embedded into their policies. So to enable the NSO to take on those kind of, and not just the NSO, the whole national statistical system to take on those challenges. So thank you very much for that very comprehensive answer. Our next question is going to go to my colleague from Colombia, Karen. Karen, how is the trade-off between widening the data available and having data with sufficient quality standards? So if you can talk to us about that, that trade-off, that would be great. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. I would like to start by saying that the timeliness of the data is also an aspect of quality. So anytime that you are producing more data and you are widening the availability of data, you are also increasing the quality of the official statistics overall. Also, I would like to highlight that the use of new sources and new methods is not exclusively from the National Statistics Office. With the digitalization of the world and the fourth revolution, everyone around the world is actually using big data, is using satellite imageries, and they are doing analysis with the data that is coming from these sources and methods. And another thing that I would like to highlight is that I'm going to use the same term used the first time that I saw it in a paper of UNSC, saying that both the new sources or alternative sources of information and methods are agnostics to the topics, which they are referring to the fact that you can have scale economies when using these new data sources. Because at the beginning, you can use satellite imagery and methods to classify the satellite imagery, and then neuronal networks to produce the data for one specific SDG indicators. But then all this knowledge in using satellite imagery and all this knowledge of the classification methods of the satellite imagery can be applied and used not only for the production of SDGs, but overall to the production of any statistics, regardless of the topic. So we recognize that there is a trade-off, but we also see that the innovation are just in the doors of the National Statistics Office. So all these discussions needs to be done, and the National Statistics Office again should be the not only the data stewardship of the data ecosystem, also the data quality steward. So all these discussions need to be in place, and in another hand, in terms of quality, we don't have, again, standards at international level established. So, and we cannot wait in terms, for example, of SDGs, 2 more years at least to have international standards to be approved in order to produce and use more data for monitoring SDGs. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. Back to you, Karen.
Super. Thank you, Karen. And I think I've never heard before, but I really like the term, the data equality stewardship of National Statistics Offices. We're talking a lot about data stewardship now, but you're absolutely right about data quality stewardship. And of course, as you say, virtually anyone can use big data. I think the role that the NSO can play in that is helping those who are using that to have some sort of quality assessment for that. So thank you very much for your answer, Karen. Our next question is going to go to the Philippines. So how could countries approach the use of non-traditional data sources, methods, and quality assurance protocols? Wilma, if you would like to take that question, thank you. I am not hearing Wilma. Is Wilma?
I cannot unmute my mic earlier, Cara. So thank you very much now. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you well. Go ahead, Wilma.
Yeah, okay. So I will speak for what we have done here in the Philippines. First is to have consultations with civil society organizations and non-government organizations, and come up with assessment of any available data that can monitor the SDGs. Second would be to evaluate this data using a defined quality assurance framework and score allocation matrix to determine whether this can be used for official or these are just good for non-official purposes. Next would be to invest in people or private groups and invest in data to strengthen the collection of non-traditional data to be used for official or for non-official purposes. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you very much, Wilma. Indeed, I think the investment in people to build capacity, as well as the investment in data, is what is needed to ensure that we are able to adequately assess non-traditional sources of data. So thank you very much for that. Our next question is going to go to our colleague from the UK. The question is it necessary to count on a unique quality assurance framework despite the differing data sources and techniques, or could the UNQAF and its supporting standards, such as GSBPM, GAMSO, GSIM, could that be used? What kind of standards could an NSO implement in that framework? So in either in a unique quality assurance framework or in the UN QAF framework?
Yeah, so in terms of giving a direct answer to this, I would say perhaps no, it's not strictly necessary or essential. And the mentioned quality assurance framework manual and the supporting standards, such as the business process model, together, I think they provide a comprehensive resource to draw from on one hand. In fact, the UN manual does include guidelines on quality assurance and key principles for other data sources where I suppose non-traditional ones would fit. But then the issue is that all of these are quite high level, so they would still require quite a bit of in-depth planning and fleshing out by NSOs if they would like to use that, these resources. So I would say, even though perhaps everything we need exists already somewhere in some form of guidance, because there are a lot of tools out there, even though all of these perhaps exist, it would still be preferable that yes, there is some sort of unique quality assurance that kind of pulls together all the important aspects and essential aspects that we definitely don't want to compromise on, taken from these frameworks. So it's kind of a no, but also yes answer. So it's not that straightforward. So then in terms of the second part of that, what kind of standards could the NSOs implement in that framework if it were to exist, such a unique framework? Well, I think, that would be like a blend between the standards already listed in the existing UN frameworks and the fundamental principles for official statistics, but also standards that are specific to the NSOs for the national context, because it could be the case that the country-specific standards need to be observed as well. But there certainly are core principles, I would say, that perhaps can be definitely adopted internationally, and I think we've already seen that in at least two of the presentations today, when people were trying to come up with quality assurance tools and methods, and they were trying to cherry pick in a way the most essential bits from the existing formal frameworks. So yeah, things such as impartiality, timeliness, accuracy, relevance, methodological soundness, I think these are standards that should definitely be there. But then there is some kind of flexibility that can be had for the rest of it. And it also would depend on what kind of data we're talking about, what kind of non-traditional source it is, because also that can vary quite a bit. So yeah, a yes and no with a bit of a flexibility for that one.
That's a super answer, Antanaska. Indeed, I don't think there is a single answer to this. And I think in all of the quality assurance frameworks, including the UK one, there are elements of the UN QAF in there, and also some other aspects in many of them, including the indication of the ethical data ethics in it as well. So I think you're absolutely right. And also, as was noted, I believe Karen noted, sometimes getting an international standard can take an awfully long time, and we only have 8 years left. And if we are to be able to report on things, we need to move quite fast. But maybe this will be, kind of the cutting edge, the start of a larger global consultation on this. So we have our last question, and that is going to go to our colleague from Jordan. Excuse me. Are there any additional or new principles that should be included for non-traditional data sources and methods? So if our colleague from Jordan can answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think, yes, we have to consider some of principles that depend on the what the non-traditional data that we use and what the target. So we have to be very careful about the accuracy, the coverage, the ethics. So when we talk about the satellite image and the OpenStreetMap or any open source, we have to consider what's the accuracy that can this data measure. But if we use social media and mobility, we have to consider the bias, the privacy, the ethics of data. So we have to be very careful about all these principles. And it is very important to know that the non-traditional data will not be for all indicators alternate of the official data. It may be complement and support the traditional data, but it will not be completely alternative, except if we have some of conditions like COVID. So yes, we can take it as alternate. For example, we have been implemented another project using non-traditional data for to measure the effect and the principle of the policies that implemented in Jordan during COVID. So we depend on the social media like Facebook, Google, Twitter. So in this project, we form a community for ethics and for the data ethics. So we study the privacy, the bias, all principles that are related of the data. So yes, very important to take considers of these principles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it is important to look at new principles and to develop them. And in this case, for SDGs, often we're doing it in the country context. So we've actually run over a little bit, but what I would like to suggest is we just take 5 more minutes. And I'm going to ask each of our presenters to give us a 1-minute summary of what they've taken away from this session. I guess we're going to go back to the order that we had from the presentation. So we'll start with the UK. Atanaska, if you can just give us a 1-minute summary of what you've taken away from this session, please go ahead.
Thanks, Cara. Well, it's been a very informative session for me. It's been really interesting to listen to every single presentation. And to me, the main kind of takeaway message is it's just been great to see what kind of efforts and challenges the different NSOs are going through. And also so many things resonated with me while we were developing our tool, and then to see the Philippines developing something very, very similar. And then Colombia, the process that they were using in terms of, trying to decide the important dimensions from the official framework that could be relevant to experimental statistics. And it just reminds me so much of the processes that we went through in the UK to design our tool. So it's just great to see that even though we are so far apart, we're actually going through very similar processes and reaching quite similar outcomes at the end. I think this is really positive. And also I've had some a question that came through the chat that made me think about certain limitations that we may be having. So that was a good takeaway that I will take in terms of kind of when it comes to redesigning our framework. So yeah, it's been a good, there's been an element of lesson learned, but also it's just been really, really nice to see what others have been going through and to see that it's quite similar to the processes we went through as well. So thank you very much for organizing and to everyone for sharing their experiences.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to the Philippines. Wilma, can you give us kind of your takeaway from this session in 1 minute or less? Thanks, Wilma.
Yeah, thank you, Cara. I just appreciate how the countries are really moving forward on the use of non-traditional data sources. So they are here. We really need just to tap them and develop methodologies so that we can use this as a complement to monitor the sustainable development goals. As you have said, we only have 8 years. We have to do more to tap the use of non-traditional sources. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Wilma. Karen, can we get your thoughts from the Colombian point of view? What did you take away from this session?
Thank you. Well, more data is available, and the lack of sources is a bottleneck for widening the data availability to monitor the progress of the SDGs. That is the ultimate purpose of the work that we do. So there is an opportunity to use all this new data and at the same time to be aware of all what is needed to achieve at least some quality standards. However, it is achievable through a better governance and also through mechanisms to improve collaboration between the different stakeholders from diverse sectors, public, private, academia, and also you can improve access to information by facilitating means and tools that allow to maintain closer communication with users. So thanks again, and back to you, Cara.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, and now some closing 1-minute thoughts from our colleague from Jordan, Ms. Al-Rassan. 1 minute, your thoughts on the session.
Yes, thank you very much for this interesting session. For me, it's very interesting, and I'd like if there is any opportunity to have a meeting with all our colleagues here in this session, so to go in more details of their experience and their pilot, to have a benefit from their experiences, because I think it's very important, and it's for us, we are start in first stage in using data science for developing SDGs. So hopefully we can develop and make more coordination and cooperation between us. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Oja from India, can you give us our 1 minute, your closing thoughts on this?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I found this event very interesting. At least I could understand what is going in other countries in this area. But just integrating this non-traditional data in official statistics, definitely it is a very big challenge. And I would like to reiterate that a clear data policy should be there. Capacity building in this area is also essential. And there should be this non-traditional data should be standardized or codified in order to ensure comparability across countries. And I feel that UNSC may take initiatives in coming up with a detailed guideline in this regard. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all our panelists for their insightful presentations and discussion. I think my takeaway from this is the need for good policy, the need for good governance, the need for more collaboration, the need for capacity building, and the need for good tools to help us incorporate non-traditional data, and of course the equality for all. So I just want to let everybody know, again, thanks to our presenters and thanks to everyone who has stayed online. I know we're a little bit late. The recording of the side event will be made shortly on the meeting page, and we'd also like to invite you to attend an event that also links to quality. The roadmap for the implementation of the N2AF, an additional checklist organized by UNSD, will be held on February 10th at 7:30 a.m. And I believe the links, Heather Page has provided them in the chat. So for everybody else, thank you very much, and we'll see you very soon at the Statistical Commission, which starts on February 28th. So thank you to everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.